Well, I read through that handbook for the recently deceased. It says, live people ignore the strange and unusual. I myself am strange and unusual.
Coming to you on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
It's a strange hobby. Curious. Wouldn't it be better if you put her someplace? I've caused you some trouble.
The first Thursday of every month at 8 p.m. GMT and EST and 5 p.m. PST.
Are you mad at me? How mad at me are you?
The female perspective on all things paranormal.
I'll buy a cup if you buy a box of my delicious Girl Scout cookies. Do we have a deal? Are they made from real Girl Scouts?
From the East Coast to the West Coast, across the pond and the world beyond.
Captain Howdy said no.
Captain who?
Captain Howdy.
Who's Captain Howdy?
You know, I make the questions and he does the answers.
Oh, Captain Howdy, yeah, I see.
Nice.
Oh.
Not a psychiatrist, she needs a priest. She's already seen every psychiatrist in the world and they sent me to you. Now you're gonna send me back to them? Help her, just help her.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
It's time for ParaDivas.
They're here.
Definition of diva. To describe a person who exudes great style and personality with confidence and expresses their own style and not letting others influence who they are or want to be. A person whose character makes them stand out from the rest. A person who tries to achieve what they want and who do not let people get in their way, and doing so with style and class. We are ParaDivas. I'm Marie Samuels.
And I'm Karai Cooper.
And welcome to the ParaDivas Halloween Spooktacular. To kick off the festivities tonight, I'm going to read 7 facts about Halloween that are so creepy they will keep you up at night. Costumes, decorations, and scary movies are what make the Halloween season so vibrant and fun. But as we prepare to have our pants scared off, we're left to wonder about the facts behind Halloween. Why do we celebrate this strange holiday and the things that scare us? Where did our strange but fun Halloween traditions like trick-or-treating and dressing in costume come from? Unsurprisingly, our modern and fun Halloween traditions stem from darker roots. Some 2,000 years ago, the ancient Celts celebrated Samhain on November 1st. This festival honored the dead, but the folks celebrating were sure to keep wandering spirits at bay by taking part in certain rituals. It was believed that on October 31st, the barrier between the living and the dead weakened, and the dead were able to return. History.com writes that people placed food and wine outside their homes to ward off ghosts on the eve before Samhain was celebrated. The ancients would also wear masks during the day to convince spirits that they were fellow ghosts and not living people. In the 8th century, the Christian Church adopted Samhain and turned it into All Saints' Day and All Hallows' Eve, and was celebrated the night before, which is where our modern term Halloween comes from. There are more than a couple spooky Halloween superstitions out there. Encountering ladders, broken mirrors, and black cats on an average day can lead you down an unlucky path, potentially. But if you're the superstitious type, you may want to stay inside and under your covers on Halloween Day. AmericanFolklore.net writes that if you see bats flying around your home on Halloween night, spirits and ghosts are nearby. If a black cat meows at your window or on your porch, a death will soon occur within the family. And if you hear footsteps behind you on Halloween, don't look behind you. It might be the dead trying to take you to the other side. The site writes, if you hold your breath while you drive by a cemetery, evil spirits can't enter your body. When passing a graveyard or a house where someone has died, turn your pockets inside out to make sure you don't bring home a ghost in your pocket. Those Samhain masks that the ancient Celts wore? Yeah, those were probably just dead animals. Obviously, times were much different 2,000 years ago, and wearing the skulls and hides of slaughtered livestock wasn't taboo. In 2008, National Geographic News talked to Ken Nielsen, a professor of Celtic Studies at Canada's St. Francis Xavier University. Nielsen confirmed that the ancient Celts and many other ancient cultures would use animal parts in rituals and sacrifices. In fact, other pagan tribes wore animal skulls and skins to connect with animal spirits to help them in their day-to-day lives. Being significant parts of nature, animal spirits were called upon often to lend a hand to their human brethren. Trick-or-treating came from the act of souling on All Souls Day. According to History.com, in ancient Britain, the poor would beg for soul cakes during All Souls Day on November 2nd. If the upper-class citizens agreed to give the needy said soul cakes, the recipients would pray for the souls of the provider's deceased relatives. Later, during the medieval period, young people would go guising during Halloween, which is more aligned with our more modern trick-or-treating. Children would dress up and sing, dance, recite poetry in order to receive food, wine, yes, I said wine, or money from others. Jack-o'-lanterns represent the lantern of the lost spirit of Stingy Jack. According to an old Irish folk story, Stingy Jack sat down to share a drink with the devil, something we don't recommend you do. Jack talked the devil into turning himself into a coin to pay for the drinks, without actually paying for the drinks. The devil did so, and Jack put the devil/coin into his pocket, where he also kept a silver cross that kept the devil from transforming back to his original form. Jack said he would free the devil if the devil agreed to leave Jack alone for a full year, and if Jack died within that year, the devil was not allowed to take his soul. The devil obliged and left Jack alone for that year. When the year was up, the devil returned, and Jack asked the devil to pick him a piece of fruit from a tall tree. When the devil climbed up into the tree, Jack carved a cross into the bark, so the devil could not come down until he promised to leave Jack alone again, this time for 10 years. Jack died soon after their second agreement was made, but because of his deals with the devil, God would not allow Jack into heaven, and the devil promised not to take Jack's soul. The devil gave Jack a burning coal to light his way as he wandered lost and unclaimed into the night. Jack put the coal into a carved turnip, and that's where jack-o'-lanterns originated. And finally, a lot of old Halloween traditions revolved around trying to find a match for young single women. You think having your entire family down your throat about your romantic life is tough as it is? Imagine them all performing rituals on Halloween with the intent that you have to be married off within the year. History.com says that in the 1700s, Irish cooks would bury a ring in one of the dishes, hoping that whoever finds it would find true love in the coming year. Young women would also toss apple peels over their shoulders on Halloween in hopes that the peels would spell out their future husband's initials. Scottish fortune tellers would also tell young women to assign several potential suitors' names to hazelnuts and throw the hazelnuts into the fire. The nut that burned down to ash rather than popped or cracked would reveal who her future husband would be. So now go forth into the Halloween season feeling educated and prepared to celebrate the scariness to the fullest. Remember to steer clear of the devil, evil children, and nosy grandmothers while doing so. They can really ruin a night. So now for a Halloween Spooktacular, we have a phenomenal guest. He is the OG of paranormal podcasting. the Jim Harold is joining us tonight. I'm so excited, Jim, that you are taking some time to be on ParaDivas, especially our Halloween special. Thank you so much.
Yay! Thank you, Jim Harold, for joining us.
Happy Halloween. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you for the invitation. I'm honored and looking forward to talking about some spooky stuff.
Incredibly spooky stuff. For those of you who don't know who Jim Harold is, shame on you, for one thing. But Jim Harold has 14 years experience. 14, am I right? 15 next year.
14, that's right. 14. 15 will be next year, yes.
And you are one of the original paranormal podcasters out there. So you started Jim Harold's Campfire Stories. Was that the first one?
No, actually the other way around. The Paranormal Podcast was the first one in 2005. Then I started Campfire in 2009.
Ah, okay. So Campfire came later. So let's start at the beginning, Jim, which is where we always like to start, right, Marie?
Yep.
How did you first become interested in the paranormal?
Oh, it goes way, way, way back. When I was a real little kid, I used to watch a show called In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy.
Right, I remember that show.
And that got me hooked when I was a little kid. And who knew decades later I'd be making my living talking about this stuff. So I guess the blame or the credit goes to Leonard Nimoy or the people who put out that show. But I love that show. In fact, I'm looking over here. I've got a box set of the DVDs on my shelf. It's a great one, and I just was fascinated my entire life. So when I decided to do a podcast in 2005, I asked myself, well, what am I going to podcast on? And I went through all these things. It's like, I can't add much. I said, well, there really aren't many. Believe it, there weren't many podcasts on the paranormal. Now there's about 1 million of them, but they weren't at that time, and it's been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed it.
Wow. And so, I think I remember seeing In Search Of, I think they did one on Amityville, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. That was, and in fact, that one, I think they intercut some footage from the movie even, but it was really, was a great show. And I think a whole generation, my generation, of either researchers or podcasters or people who are interested in this, they're ones who all got into it, many of them through In Search Of.
In Search Of, okay, wow.
Speaking of getting into paranormal podcasting, I do have to throw out there that Jim was my inspiration to start my podcast years ago, back when I did Macabre Moments.
Yes.
And so, Jim, my muse, my inspiration. You were a huge help for me during the beginning, and continue to be to this day. And I am forever grateful for everything that you've done for Marie Samuels.
Oh, how nice! Well, it's great that I'm great when I hear other podcasters say, "Hey, I heard your show," and it kind of spurred me on to do my own thing. I think that's great, and I'm so happy, and that's just so kind of you to say. Very kind, thank you.
I definitely aspire to be like you. And speaking of being like you started doing the podcast as a hobby.
Yes.
And
I did. Go ahead.
Why did you decide to go down the podcast road?
Well, here's what happened. I was a frustrated broadcaster. I had gone to school to be on air, whether it was television or radio. And this is before the internet was really a thing. And then 2005, adult responsibilities were there. And I had a full-time job and a family to support. So I had ended up in media, but on the ad sales side, not in the being in front of the camera, in front of the mic. And it was kind of sad. I'm like, I'm never going to get to do what I really went to school to do. And I heard about this thing called podcasting, and I thought, well, I could do it for fun. At least it's like somebody who wanted to be maybe a concert violinist, and they said, well, I can't do it, but maybe I can play in the local, community group just to have some fun. And then it just kept building, and all of a sudden it became my job. So it's been a very cool thing, and I'm very thankful to my audience. And in shows like this one, getting to help spread the word to new people, because we're always, always looking for new people and new listeners. And it really, shows like this would have been very instrumental in building out an audience for my shows.
Well, and I do feel that there's also a lot of listeners out there that are searching for paranormal podcasts and they haven't come across your show yet.
Yeah.
So
I was one of them. I was one
sure.
of them. That's how I found both of you. Was just like typing in paranormal podcast.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, as many people that listen, and this could go for me or any of the paranormal shows, many of them, the more popular ones, there's still more people that don't know about us than do know about us. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we can always grow, and that's one of the challenges when you're an independent podcaster like I am. I mean, it's a business. I have my own little media company, but I don't have an iHeartRadio or someone like that behind me. So, I don't have huge marketing budgets and things. So it's always a challenge to get the word out. But my favorite thing is when somebody says, well, once I heard of you and once I listened to Campfire, which is my most popular show, I was hooked. And then that's like music to my ears. That's great to hear when it happens.
So if you wouldn't mind, can you just give us a rundown of all the different podcasts that you host?
Okay, it's lengthy. I do the paranormal podcast, which is free. Jim Harold's Campfire, which is free. Jim Harold's Crime Scene, which is free. And I also this year rolled out a couple of new shows. Soulmate Stories with my wife. We do that a couple of times a month. And then one called Podlords, which is not about the paranormal. That one's about just podcasting. Those are my free podcasts. Then I have a whole series of paid podcasts, UFO Encounters, Ghost Insight, The Other Side, The Cryptid Report. So in the average week, I put probably between 5 and 7 podcasts out per week.
Wow.
So it's a full-time job. But
That's a lot of
very
work.
rewarding. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but I enjoy it immensely, and I'm very blessed to get to do it.
Absolutely, 100%. So now the Campfire, I called in and told a few stories on the Campfire, and you also have published the Camp Tales.
Yes.
Or True Ghost Stories, right? Tales from the Camp, Jim Harold's.
Yeah, 5 books.
Yeah, 5 books. Wow.
Yes.
He also has a color.
Yeah, 5 books each.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. What I've done over those 5 books, and I wanted to get a 6th one out this fall. I wasn't quite able to get it done this time, but we've done 5 books. Each one of them has 70 stories gleaned from some of the best stories we've had on the Campfire, and boy, we've had some interesting ones over the years for sure.
Yeah, I've an avid listener, and I've heard a plethora, and this is why I was so excited that you were going to be our Halloween special, because I wanted you to share some of those stories with us.
Yeah, let's.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the spookiest?
Go ahead.
Ones that have unnerved you as the caller was telling their story.
Actually, Marie's story was one of my favorite all-time stories. Kind of a hush. Has she ever told that one on the show?
Well, she not really. She's told us some stuff, but she's kind of shied away from from getting too personal.
No, okay. So is this a story you would mind me sharing, Marie?
Oh no,
kind of a hush.
You can, yeah, please do. Or I can tell it. I just I haven't told it yet. I have told other stories that I did tell on Campfire in the past, but I have not told the kind of hush story.
Kind of hush.
Do you mind? Yeah. Do you mind telling it? Because I love this story. It's one of the creepiest ones.
It is pretty
okay. So, let's do it.
I'll kick off the campfire then. So everybody, let's gather around the campfire. Get your s'mores. Get your tea, right? Hot cocoa or hot toddies or what have you.
Hot dog.
Or hot dog, yeah. So I was probably about 12 at the time, and my little brother, that would have made him about 10. And I had a friend who lived across the street. She was 12, and she had a little sister that was about 10. And after school, we would go over to their house because their mother didn't get off work until like 5. And so we would have the house unsupervised for about an hour or so before she got home from work. So it was after school, we were over there, and we were like, oh, what are we going to do? And it just popped into my head. I said, well, why don't we have a seance? And we were huge fans of the Carpenters at the time. This would have been in the late 80s. I'm dating myself, but that's okay. Anyway, this late 80s, we were huge fans of the Carpenters. And I said, why don't we have a seance and we can try and contact Karen Carpenter?
Like the Carpenters, the band?
Yes.
Like what they sang "Close to You"? Is that that was their hit, right? Yeah. Okay.
That was one of them. Yes.
Okay.
So they said, well, how do you do a seance? And I said, well, my guess, I really had no idea, but I was into, horror movies and the horror genre. So I'd seen movies and stuff. And so I thought, well, what I guess we would do is we'll sit around in a circle, hold hands, we'll light a candle and just ask for her to use, use our energy to manifest herself or move something in the room. So we went upstairs to my friend's bedroom, closed the door, lit the candles, and I said, well, to make it even better, just to tune in to that one specific person, let's go ahead and put a Carpenter's record on playing softly in the background too, because we're really trying to get Karen Carpenter to come through. So we had the record going. We all joined hands, and we were saying something like, we're wanting to speak with Karen Carpenter. Please use our energy, come through us, and move an object in the room. And so now we're all looking around the room to see if anything's moving. And to the right of me was my younger brother and then my friend's younger sister. And they were staring at a door that was to the left of me and behind my friend. And on the back of that door came out like this little hanger thing that you could hang a coat hanger on. And there was a coat hanger hanging on that. And so everything kind of just happened at once, and it happened really fast. But I looked over at them. There was a gasp. I looked over. My friend's little sister passed out. She just dropped, fainted. I looked at the hanger, and it was slowly rocking back and forth. And it wasn't, it was like coming way up high and then way, it was swaying slowly and almost vertically. And then it would come arc back around. Well, then I look at my brother, and his eyes just popped out of his head. The only way out of this bedroom was through that door. He went the other way to the window, and he was going top speed. He was not going to open that window. He was going to just crash right through the glass to get out of the room. And I grabbed him by his shirt collar, like right before he hit the glass. Stopped him, and I'm like, stop, what are you doing? And he's like, I gotta get out of here. He's freaking out. Meanwhile, my friend's tending to her little sister who's fainted on the floor. And he's like, I gotta get out. And then we have to get these two through the door to get out of the bedroom now. And I saw the hanger moving, and I'm thinking, why are they freaking out so bad about, yeah, the hanger moved, and that was really, it's cool to me, but it's not scary, it's not making me faint or want to jump through this window off the second floor, room. So I'm like, we need to get through the door. Let's get out of the room. Let's figure out what's going on. We get Lisa off the floor. We get downstairs. And Lisa, my friend's little sister, she's hysterical. She's hyperventilating. Her sister slaps her to get her to, kind of calm down. Because now we're also running out of time. Their mother is due home in about 20 minutes, 15 minutes at this point. And I'm like, you guys, okay, everybody just calm down. I was like, so the little one that passed out, I said, Lisa, what did you see? And she said, I saw the hanger moving. I saw the hanger moving very slowly. And she said, I saw a hand on the hanger, moving the hanger, but it was just a hand on the hanger. Like a floating hand touching the hanger. And I'm like, okay, all right. And then I asked my little brother, what did you see? And my little brother said, I saw Karen Carpenter. She was holding the hanger and she was dancing, and she was wearing a flowy white dress, and she raised her leg up kind of like straight out in front of her like a can kick, right? But her leg kept going up and like contorting beyond her shoulder, and that's when he lost it and wanted to go out the window. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, I'm getting goosebumps just telling this story. Okay.
I knew it was a good one.
So we're like, oh, okay, it worked. It really worked. And we're like, I saw the hanger move. Unfortunately, my friend Becky, she didn't see anything but, the hysterics. So I said, my friend Becky and I'm like, okay, well, we had candles lit in her bedroom. I'm like, we need to get those candles out before your mom gets home so we don't get in trouble. We're not, because we're not supposed to be playing with fire. We're 12 years old, right? So I'm like, you and I are going to have to go up there and blow out those candles, all right, so that we don't get in trouble. So we, kind of creep up the stairs, and we have to go through that door back into the bedroom, to get the candles out. And as we enter the room, the record was still playing. Because we all, rushed out of the room. We ran out of the room. Didn't bother with the record player at all. So as we entered the room, you could hear that the record was still going. Then this is when we heard it was skipping, and it was going, there's a kind of hush, zoom. There's a kind of hush, zoom.
That's creepy.
Right? And so I zipped the needle off the record, blew out the candles, went back downstairs, and all of us were just freaked out, completely freaked out. So her mom comes home, and it was a Friday night, and so she invited us, at least I was invited over for a slumber party. But my little brother, she invited all four of us to go get ice cream because it was like Friday night thing, right? So we're like, great, let's go get some ice cream at Dairy Queen. So we all get into her truck, and so it's a truck. So we're all in the front seat in the bench. It's a, bench seat truck, right? And we're all in the cab of the truck, and she turns on the radio, and I am not even kidding. There's a kind of hush. Over the world tonight. That it was on right at that point. Yeah, and we're trying to like not freak out because we didn't want to tell her, what we had done. We didn't want to get in trouble. But yeah, it was on the radio, and we were just losing our minds. We were just like, "You got to be kidding me!" And that's
that was one of the wildest stories we've ever had. And I'm sorry that I made you brought me on as a guest that I'm interviewing you on that. I love that story. I thought that was such a great campfire story.
I appreciate that, Jim. In fact, it was published in volume 4.
Yes.
And it was one of the top 3. That you get the extra bonus link to. So I appreciate you doing that for me.
It's funny.
No problem.
Do you get a lot of scary Ouija board stories?
Yeah, one that comes to mind was in the very early days of the show.
Oh, this is
the one with the lava lamp. So this is like a greatest hit, probably from 2009. Anyway, this young woman, she was a teenager at the time, and she was playing around with a Ouija board with her friend, and they had some candles and a lava lamp and different things going in their house. And the thing is that basically what happened was the person who told the story, and her name was Leanne, and I don't know what her friend's name was, but her friend said, if your spirit is really here, can you prove it to us? Because it was spelling some things out on the board. And, I don't know if you both remember those old lava lamps they used to have with the globby stuff in the middle.
Yeah, I have one in my kitchen. I'm going to go switch it off, actually.
There you go. Well, you might want to after this, because what happened is basically all of a sudden they noticed that the lava lamp, the little gloopy stuff, it was like forming into something. And they were looking at it, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's the face of a devil. It was like teeth and everything going. And then just as it happened, they closed, and all the candles went out. And then when they closed the Ouija board, the light in the lava lamp went back to normal. but it was like the face of this growling, snarling devil looking at them. So it was really very creepy. And I asked Leanne if she ever played with a Ouija board anymore, and I think she said one time. But other than that, she stayed away from it. And see, different people feel differently about the Ouija board. Kind of the way I look at it is a spiritual chainsaw. Let me explain. Like a lot of times you've probably seen on TV, or maybe you've been at a festival or something, and you see one of these guys that could take a chainsaw to ice or wood and make these beautiful, lovely sculptures.
Yeah.
And he knows what he's doing, right? And he can make these lovely sculptures. Now, if I take a chainsaw, I'm just as likely to, or more likely to cut my arm off, right? Yeah. So I kind of see the Ouija board as a spiritual chainsaw. If you know what you're doing, I guess you'd be okay. But if you don't, you might open up a door to something that is a little more than you can handle.
That's a good, I've never heard it put that way before, and I think it's perfect.
Yeah, that's a fantastic analogy.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, we have one in the house, but ever since all this started with the show, and after I've talked to so many people, I won't use it.
Yeah, because you learn, like, that's the same with me. I have one too, and I thought it was a joke, and, I never used it just because I never got around to it. But since I've started doing the show and I've heard all these different accounts, and that's sort of is the common denominator is, don't use a Ouija board. Yeah,
it is spooky, but the creepiest story I ever had, and I tell this on almost every show, and Maria probably told it on your show when we had the previous interviews before, but I almost always have to tell it because it's such a classic, is the Roadhouse Saloon. Oh, if you don't mind, I could tell you that one.
Yeah. Oh, I'd like to hear it.
Okay, all right. Well, this is about my caller, T.I., and she was up in Wisconsin at the time. And her and a friend went to see a band, and it was kind of in this rural area. And they stayed till the bar closed, right? And they were talking to the band and things. So they started to head back, 2:30 in the morning. And then a little bit on the way, and it was T.I. was the woman and Bob was the man. So T.I. tells Bob, I've got to go to the restroom. They were about an hour away from their destination, and it was kind of a rural area. And nothing was open because, it was past closing time. And Bob said, well, you could go in the woods, or, and she said, no, just drive fast, she said. So anyway, they come up on this, in a little way, they're going down the road, they come up on this bar that's kind of set off. And they're like, oh my goodness, what is this? It's wide open. I mean, it's open. The lights, neon lights are on. There's cars in the parking lot. The joint is jumping. And he said, well, let's go in here. I don't know why they'd be open after 2 o'clock in the morning. They should be closed, but let's not question it. So they go in, and T.I. goes to the restroom. Bob gets a couple beers. They come back, and they're drinking. And the people are acting kind of weird. They're kind of like smiling at them, but not really talking. And the one guy puts, they have an old jukebox that has like real records on it. I used to have to explain that, but now records are back, so I don't have to explain what those are anymore. But real vinyl records. So he puts on Chubby Checkers' Let's Twist Again, which is a golden oldie. And he comes up to T.I., and he wants to dance, and he smiles real big, and his teeth are all rotten. He's kind of this weird-looking guy. And T.I. has a cane. And she shows him the cane, said, oh, I don't dance. And T.I. said in this case she was glad she had that cane to beg off the would-be suitor. Anyway, so they're playing this music, and Bob and T.I. are talking, and they're like, I'm really glad we came here, Bob says, because they have this big mural, this big Western mural that looks like an old-time saloon. And I'd heard about this, but I'd never seen it. And the interesting thing they noticed is the people in the mural were actually in the were in the bar. Like the bartender looked like the bartender, and there were a couple women sitting at one table, and they were in the painting. It was like mirroring the people there. And they thought, oh, well, that you can explain that. The artists, these must be regulars, and they just made this painting. So they keep looking at this mural, and they keep looking at this mural. And they noticed there's a couple of saloon doors like they used to have in the old Westerns, you know, when they come in and say, I'm looking for Bart, you know, or whoever. And they noticed something they hadn't noticed originally. There were two misty figures in the doorway. And they looked a little more, and they looked a little more. And then those misty figures started to become more and more solid. And they looked back, and it was kind of like the old Polaroid pictures, if you remember those, that they developed in slowly. And they noticed one looked to be a little good bit taller, one was shorter. And the more it developed in, they noticed one looked to be a woman with curly hair and boots, and T.I. had curly hair and boots. And the figure now, it had a cane. T.I. walked with a cane. And then the other one, very definitively, looked to be a much taller male, which Bob was. At that point, Bob and T.I. looked at each other and said, let's get out of here. So they walk out, get up to walk out, and these people are like beckoning them, like, come back, come back, come back. So anyway, they go, they close the door, and T.I. said the place went dead silent. Once that door closed, it looked like it had not been open. There was no one there. All the neon lights were off. All the music was gone. It was like it was totally closed. They turn around, look at the parking lot. Before it was full of cars. Now there's a car there, their car, and it's the only car. So with that, they say, let's get out of here. So T.I., being a much braver person than I am, a couple nights later comes back with a friend. She walks in. There's a young lady at the bartender. Walks up to her and says, we were here the other day. I said, that's nice. They're looking around. There's a jukebox. It's a jukebox that plays CDs, not records. And there's no chubby checker music at all on it. So anyway, T.I.'s talking to the bartender and said, you know what? We were here the other night, and there was that good-looking guy here, this bartender. Where's he at? And she's like, we don't have a bartender like that. Our bartenders is me and my elderly father. And with that, T.I. and her friend decided to leave, and that was it. But who knows? Did she cross into another dimension when she went to the Roadhouse Saloon? Who knows? But it was weird.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that's my favorite campfire story ever, I'd say.
Kind of reminds me of The Shining. Remember, Marie, when they show at the end when they show the photo and the bartender's in the photo, and it was the same one he was seeing, and he's in the photo, and you know, so it's parallel.
I forgot about that. That's right.
Right? Like and
yeah, it's like
a parallel mashup of some kind, you know?
Yeah, it is very, very weird.
Parallel
the thing I love about the campfires, we have these classic stories, but then we'll have another story come in. You know, just this week I had the weirdest story. Do you mind if I tell it?
No, we want to hear, please.
Okay. So anyway, this gentleman, and this was literally on the show I just released Thursday, and I think I recorded the call Wednesday night. And this is definitely a campfire classic. It's one that makes you think. So this gentleman is sitting in his house watching TV. The phone rings. He picks it up. Person says, how you doing, Kevin? And this guy's name's Kevin. He's like, I'm doing okay. I'm hanging in there. How are you? And he's like, I'm fine. And Kevin said this person sounded very mild-mannered and very easygoing and very kind. And he said, well, Kevin, I just wanted to check on you. I hadn't heard from you a while, and I'm going to be seeing you soon, and just wanted to see how you were doing. And at this point, Kevin thinks, who is this? I don't want somebody just showing up in my house. I don't know who they are. What's going on here? So he politely asked the person, he says, I'm sorry, I don't recognize your voice. Who is this? And the voice on the line says, well, Kevin, it's Jesus. Oh. And with that, Kevin says, well, you have a nice day, and thank you for calling. And he hung up. But it bothered him, and it bothered him. Now, about a week later, Kevin had a massive heart attack. And he was so close to death at the hospital, they called in the chaplain to be with the family. Now, he did survive it, and he has since survived some subsequent health crises. But he said that really changed the way he thought about life, and he's never been able to explain that call in terms of where that came from. So who knows? But I thought that was a wild one.
That one is crazy. That's crazy.
That yeah. How did that's? And did he do like a what do they call that? Star 69 when you like can see what number it was?
No, that's the part I forgot to mention. I forgot to mention this.
Okay.
So he went into his call log.
Yeah.
All of his other calls showed up. That call did not show up.
That's insane.
Oh my gosh.
Because could you imagine like having Jesus' phone number? I would call him every day, every time I had a problem. Jesus, I'm having a bad hair day. Please help me.
Oh God.
He would change his number. Pardon?
You're too young to remember this, but it's like there was an old Budweiser commercial. No,
I remember that. I look young, Jim. I am not young. I look young. I'm not young though. I remember those.
It's.
I remember where's the beef.
So, well, I wonder.
Where's the? Oh my!
I remember where's the beef. So let's go. I'm where's the beef old.
Where's the beef old?
There you go.
No, but
me too. Me too.
The guy that got the call from Jesus and then subsequently had a almost fatal heart attack. Did he regret hanging up on?
Right.
Like, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't seem to be upset because, I mean, let me tell you, I mean, what would be the logical, I mean, if Jesus called me, I'd probably hang up on him too. I'm sorry, but I would assume it was somebody playing a prank.
Yeah.
So I don't think, but he did say it did change his outlook on life in a big way and changed kind of the way he lived his life in a big way. Yeah. But I don't think he did say specifically, and again, that's the thing about campfire stories. They're only a minute or two, or a few minutes. It's not like if you listen to the show, typically what you'll hear are 6 or 7 calls, usually 5 to 10 minutes apiece, and people from all over the world. And that's basically what you'll hear. But the thing is that I don't know in that depth, but I didn't get the sense that he was angry with himself. He was just puzzled and troubled, I guess, about it.
Yeah. I mean, hindsight is 20/20, right?
Well, yeah.
So.
Right. Well, I mean, how do you react? I mean, I got to say, I have to admit that if somebody called me and said they were Jesus, I would think, oh, well, maybe that's just somebody having some fun and pulling my leg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would too, but then like it's in retrospect after something happening, it'd be like, damn, I wish I wouldn't have jumped the gun on that. You know what I mean? Like, maybe this could have been prevented if I would have just humored the guy for a second.
No, sorry, go ahead.
No, I said I understand what you're saying. I agree with that to some extent.
Yeah.
That whole call-in idea, though, is so Wild West, because you never know what you're going to get. Right.
That's the thing. That's the thing that I love about it, and I don't screen the calls.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
I mean, and basically 99% of the calls I get end up on the air. I don't really. First of all, I believe the vast majority of people who call me are telling the truth. They've experienced something and they are relaying it to me as best they can. Now, does that mean maybe sometimes people call who did not really see a ghost? They saw something else, but they think it's a ghost? That's possible. But I think the vast majority of people are sincere. I think we've been very lucky about it. Not a person or two I thought was pulling my leg and I didn't air the story, but the vast majority of people, I think, are being very sincere. And I think that's why the show has become popular, is because people know that I'm coming from a non-judgmental space. A lot of people, if somebody had come on and said, well, I talked to Jesus, say, that's funny, and no, you didn't, and blah, blah, blah. No, I'm taking Kevin at his word, and I do actually take him at his word. And I believe that happened to him. So, and I'll often just say to people this. There was a story that I had where a guy was a volunteer firefighter, and he had this dream that there was this huge white truck. It was like a truck you would buy, like a pickup truck, but it was really long. And it was a bright white Ford, I think it was an early or late 90s model, something like that. This happened a few years ago, but he just called it in the last month or two. And then the next day, he had he was at his work, or I don't know where he was doing. He got a call from his fire department. He needed to come in. There had been a fatal accident, and in the dream the night before, there had been a fatal accident involving this long white truck that had weird dimensions. Well, what happened was, and it was a Ford, a bright white Ford truck, but it was really long. So anyway, what happened the next day, and I don't mean to laugh, it was just really weird. He got a call. There had been an accident. There had been a fatality involving a long cement truck that was about the same length as the truck that it was in his dream, and it had been hit by a bright white Ford that matched exactly that model, and somebody was killed. So I told him, I said, either you had a premonition of somebody being killed or you're making it up. And I don't believe he was making it up. So to me, that's proof of the supernatural, because to me, there's two possibilities. Either somebody's making it up. Some of these stories are so incredible and so inexplicable that it either has to be the supernatural or they have to be making it up. I choose to believe that they're telling the truth.
And that's an excellent segue into my next question. Having heard all these stories for all these years, that is your personal belief then? So you do believe in, what you're hearing 99% of the time. Have you had any paranormal?
It's weird. I'm probably more believing of my campfire callers than I am if I see something on TV.
Okay.
If I see something on TV. No, if I see something on TV and somebody said, well, I saw Bigfoot or something, I don't know the details of it. So yeah. I'm a little more skeptical of it if I don't get to talk to the person myself. Because my standpoint is take campfire out of my whole paranormal. And when I talk about paranormal, I'm talking about everything from ghosts to cryptic creatures to UFOs. I kind of have that Big Ten philosophy. Unfortunately, people think the campfire is just about ghost stories, but that's just part of it. But the point is that I believe I'm what I call a skeptical believer, in the sense that I believe sometimes there are people who unfortunately believe everything is a ghost. Everything's a ghost, everything's aliens, everything's whatever, Bigfoot. Yeah. And then you get, on the other side, you got people who believe, all of this stuff is BS. None of it's real. It's all made up, or people imagining things or hoaxing things. But I'm kind of on the middle ground, leaning towards believer. So I do believe in all these things, but I don't believe every light in the sky is a UFO. I don't believe every creature in the woods is Bigfoot, and I don't believe every cold burst of wind in your house is a ghost. But I do believe these things exist, and I think to say, they don't exist and it's just silly, I think that's silly, because I found out throughout history there's so many things we don't understand. There's so many things we don't know, that I think that we're kind of narcissistic if we think we've got it all figured out.
I thought you had a
because
question.
Think of people, what I'm talking about are science types who say, the science doesn't know about that, so it doesn't exist. Well, maybe, science didn't know about DNA in 1900, right?
Right.
That didn't mean it didn't exist.
I mean, there's new species every year.
To me, the supernatural very much can exist. We just haven't figured it out yet.
Well, I don't know that. I don't know that we're meant to figure it out. I don't know that we ever
I
will.
agree with you.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
That just makes it that much more intriguing to me.
Yes, I agree.
So now, Karai has a campfire story that she wanted to share.
Ooh, cool.
Well, yeah. I'm kind of still dealing with it, actually. It was pretty scary. Now, I'm not a skeptic. I love the paranormal. That's why I started doing this show. I found Marie years ago when she did Macabre Moments. So I've always been interested in the paranormal. But like you, Jim, I am not the first thing that pops into my mind when something happens is not it's a ghost. Right? So for me, having this experience is kind of weird. It's kind of hard to talk about. But I I recently went down to do research for one of our shows that we have that we're going to be doing next year. And I went to try my hand at collecting EVPs and I went to a place here where there were a lot of murders committed on a piece of property by a very prolific Canadian serial killer. And I went down there and I took somebody with me who was a sensitive. She's very sensitive. And she was pointing out different areas, which when we actually had the property cleared by an RV, were the same areas that my friend had pointed out. But I did manage to get some EVPs, and I listened to them. And my voice recorder has disappeared, so now I can't find it. And I was I got really depressed after I came home. I was depressed I was depressed for about 2 weeks, and I'm not somebody who suffers from depression, so I don't know whether it was just from the energy that was left there, or what. And then I got really sick, which is, probably just coincidental. But I still haven't found my voice recorder.
Well, it wasn't just depression she was dealing with. She was also experiencing uncommon rage.
Yeah, there was a few things that went on. Like, I've just not been the same since I went down there and was trying to get spirits to talk to me. It was not a good idea.
So, and she thought you got the one EVP where you heard a voice say help.
Yeah.
And then was there a second one?
No.
Just the one.
Just the one.
Yeah.
And I'd play it for you, but I can't find my voice recorder now. Like, I put it in the box with my camera. Yeah, I know. And I put it in the box with my camera and my headset that I use for, I'm a very organized person, and my headset that I use for podcasting. And it's gone. The voice recorder is just gone. So I don't know. I don't think I took it out again. I know my husband didn't take it out, so I'm not sure. Don't know what happened to it.
Well, it is very, very strange indeed. And the thing is, we've had stories on the campfire of presences or spirits attaching themselves. We have one, which is actually, and I don't mean to scare you,
okay.
But there was someone who had gone into a haunted house with a friend, and there was this gust of air and all these things happened. And basically, the spirit followed her across the country for 2 or 3 years, from the East Coast out to the Southwest, and she had gone in with her son for trick-or-treating into this metaphysical shop. And the attendant there said, "Could you hold on a second? Would you talk to my boss? Because I think this person's encounter saw something, was sensitive and saw around her." The owner came back, and it was an older woman, and she looked at her, and she said her aura, she had a dark spirit connected to her, something really nasty is what she said. This was in one of the books. And basically it turned out that it took a year and a half, finally, till she said, weird things started happening, weird sounds in her house, and just a lot of strangeness and a lot of darkness. And finally, she had a cleansing done or something. And then somehow the spirit went back to that home. The family that it originally came from reported that they started experiencing things again, that it had left her and gone back to the original point of origin. So I think that kind of thing is possible.
You do,
I'm hoping it didn't happen to you, but I think it's possible.
I mean, I hope so too, because I had, and then another very prolific person, paranormal researcher in Canada, who's on quite a few television shows on the travel and entertainment channel. But she did a clearing of the place, and she said that there were some very, very dark things there. Very dark things.
Yeah.
So she's...
Yeah, and I think those things exist, especially where there's been some kind of great sadness, some kind of great tragedy, or in this case, some kind of great crime, I would think.
Well, yeah, multiple murders. Yeah, multiple murders.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, so I mean, that's sort of a lesson to me and to everybody else who's listening that, you don't want to just run off and do this stuff if you don't have a lot of experience. and you're not prepared for, what any kind of outcome might be.
Yeah, it is scary stuff. I don't do paranormal investigation, and it's not really fear per se. It's kind of like the way that I compare it. A lot of people, because people automatically, especially people who are not familiar with the paranormal field, who will interview me or talk to me, they'll say, "Oh, No, I don't actually." I've gone when I've been at some events when they've had little ghost hunts and things, but I've never really gone on paranormal investigations because I see my role. I'm like an arbiter to try to communicate stories or try to interview authors like I do on my other shows other than the Campfire. So my role is not to go out and investigate spirits. Not that I wouldn't go just because I wanted to go, but I don't think I can add anything. That's not my expertise. My expertise is talking to people about their experiences or their theories and so forth.
Yeah, and it's like, just like anything, like you're a broadcaster, right? You have football broadcasters and you have football players.
That's exactly,
you know what I mean?
You read mine, that's exactly my example. It's like, because you're a football broadcaster doesn't mean you're a football player. Now, sometimes people do both, and that's fine, but that's not me.
But that's not you. And you know what? And I realized after this one experience that I had that it's not me either. Because I was like, I'm not going to do that ever again. It's not.
Right. I can understand that. If you really believe in this stuff, you got to be careful.
Yeah.
I don't think that precludes going into these places, but you got to be careful.
Yeah, no. And no. So have you had, and that's another thing too, like, my mom, when I was going to do this show, she was very worried about me because she said, it's not a joke, all this paranormal stuff. And, we talked to somebody who investigated Amityville. We talked to Andrea Perrin. You must know who all these people are. We talked to Andrea Perrin, who lived in the Conjuring house. These are famous hauntings. Deep, dark hauntings. And my mom said, if you're getting involved in this stuff, it's not a great idea. Now, after having done the show for 14 years where you're listening to this, have you ever had any experiences yourself where you've been...
I've had experiences, but they've not really been dark experiences. They've either been positive. They've been pretty much positive. I'll give you one that I think is really instructive, because I believe sometimes our loved ones communicate with us, and I think they do so in such a way that it's not like the typical Hollywood ghost, right? I don't think it's necessary. I'm sure it could be for some people, but for me it's more subtle. So one of my favorite stories happened to me about a year and a half ago. I was almost 2 years now. I was on a paranormal cruise with Micah Hanks and the late, great Rosemary Ellen Guiley. We were the speakers.
Oh my God.
And we had people that were there who took the cruise to hear us talk and take the cruise with us and so forth. So that was a lot of fun. So anyway, unfortunately, I was lucky and I had a cold the whole time. So we had one day where we were just going to do presentations. It was a day we were at sea, so we had like a 6-hour period where we went into like a little conference room and just did paranormal presentations. Rosemary did hers, she was great. Mike did some stuff, he was great. And I had mine coming up. So I said, I better go get some coffee or something because I'm getting a sore throat. And so I went ahead and did that. And I was going out, and the casino was right next to the conference room. And they had one of those big machines with the claw. And instead of like at stores and things, you got these machines with a big claw or an arcade where you can get stuffed toys. This was for money. And one of the guys that was with our group was playing. And I stopped in my tracks and I thought, oh, my uncle would have loved this. Because my uncle loved to play those machines when he would go to a store or something. And he had passed a few years earlier. And the thing about that was, I was very, very close to my uncle. He was like a second dad to me. So anyway, I was thinking of very intensely, and all of a sudden a woman walks by this gentleman playing this machine, and she puts her hand to her mouth, and cups her hand and says, John. Well, guess what my uncle's name was?
John.
Now, what are the chances? I'm in the middle of the ocean. I'm going to see a guy playing a crane game. who's with the group, so I stopped to think about it. And then I think specifically about my uncle and how much he loved those games. And then a woman comes by the machine, calls for ostensibly her husband, and his name is John. That to me is too coincidental to be a coincidence, in my mind.
Well, they say there's no such thing as a coincidence. There are no coincidences.
Jim, did you play the machine?
Yeah, I think... No, I didn't. I should have seen that before I made my mistake. You asked about regrets, Marie. That was my sign. I should have played.
That's exactly
Oh, man, I really missed them.
You did.
This whole time, I've never thought about that. But it's almost 2 years I never thought about. Maybe my uncle was trying to tell me, play that machine. We'll win for the money.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't even go there. Oh, man.
I'm sorry to
I blew it.
Well, no, I mean, as we said earlier, hindsight's 20/20, right?
That it is. Now, I could tell you another story if you want to hear it, and it's talking about hindsight. Maybe somebody went shopping and maybe they decided maybe they shouldn't have. Do you want to hear that one?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, basically, this is a really interesting story. I love this story. So this is from just a couple months ago. A caller from Los Angeles. He went to an estate sale, and they had some stuff he wanted, but it was too expensive. So he said, let's just forget it and go home. And he gave his number to the person who was selling the stuff and said, if anything changes, you want to go down the price on some of these items, here's my number, give me a call. So the next day he gets a call. And the woman says, you know what, come down here. I'm going to sell you a bunch of stuff cheap because the people here are being very disrespectful and I like you and I'm going to sell you this stuff. So anyway, he goes and he picks out the items he wants and she said, here, take this mirror with you. I think this belongs with you. You should take this. It's like this big, heavy, big mirror. And he's like, okay. So he takes the mirror and the other stuff and takes it back to his house. And then he puts it in the upstairs and weird stuff starts happening in the house. And then one day he's in the same room with the mirror and he's taking a nap. And he wakes up and he sees the mirror standing there. And he sees like this group of people in the room dressed in old-time clothing. And all of them are fuzzy except for this one guy who's real sharp. And the guy comes up to him. Well, our caller says Mike is his name, Michael. What are you doing here? What's going on? And the guy looks at him and he's like, we came with the mirror. And and he said, we like to dance. We didn't get to finish our dance. And that's where you come in.
What?
Yeah, exactly what I told you. And he kind of rubbed his eyes and they vanished. But then all this weird stuff started happening. He had this one paranormal person, researcher, come over and had him check out the house. And he calls him like a week or two later and he's like, so you didn't find anything, did you? You didn't call me back. And he's like, no, I found something. Can I come over? And he was playing back these EVPs, and they were using words like demon, although this guy was in an acting group called the Demon Acting Troupe or something, so maybe he thought that was it. But, things kept happening, and then I believe that it slowed down to nothing, and he still has the mirror, and he doesn't worry about it. But I love that idea. That the ghost said, we like to dance, and that's where you come in. I mean, that'd be like, that mirror would be out. It would
right?
be out. Yeah.
On the side of the road. I'd probably actually smash it.
Now,
I don't know, I'd probably bury it.
Really, really, mirrors are interesting. One of my favorite all-time campfire stories revolved around a mirror. And this goes back to maybe 2010, 2011. And caller called up. He was with his family, and they had rented a house for the holidays, like up in New England somewhere. It was like an old house. Like I kind of figure like an American version, a smaller version of Downton Abbey kind of thing. So they rented this house, the whole family, was probably like a dozen people, their cousins, everything. And it was Christmas Eve, and him and his cousin walk up, and they see like these two figures in a tuxedo, and they're like walking down the stairs in kind of a herky-jerky motion, which I've heard before about ghosts and apparitions. Sometimes they kind of reminds me of the Karen Carpenter story, kind of in a herky-jerky
Or
manner.
like in the rain.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and one looks at the other and says, "My dear, what a mirror image we are," and then they disappear.
Oh my God.
And later they find out, somebody said, "Did somebody walk into your room tonight?" And it turns out that somebody else saw some kind of figure as well. But that thing about the mirror image, I don't know what that means, but that's one of my favorite campfire stories. In fact, last year I did a Christmas holiday ornament contest for my listeners, and people loved it. And somebody drew an ornament based on that story. I thought that was so cool. But I love, yeah, and I still have it. I have all the ornaments. I told my wife, I said, "What are we going to do? We're going to do this again this year. What are we going to do with all these ornaments? I love them, but I'm going to have to get 2 trees and put them all up." But anyway, it's the mirror image thing that stuck with me all these years later to have a story that again involved a mirror. And I've always heard that, if you even get into things like scrying and things like that, where you can see spirits and so forth, the psychomancy and all that, mirrors seem to have a lot of spiritual baggage with them.
Yeah, and if somebody dies in a room, they cover the mirror.
Back in the day, yeah.
There's been folklore about mirrors since mirrors have been around. They say they have the ability to suck out souls. They use them to scry, like you mentioned before.
Or you can use them for psychomantium as well.
Yeah, and you're not supposed to like stare at your own reflection into your eyes for too long. And then
you do Bloody Mary in the mirror too.
Bloody Mary, Candyman.
And Candyman kind of came through the medicine cabinet.
But I thought if you looked in the mirror, you could say and said Candyman, he'd come wherever.
Well, you do have a point. Throughout the movie, he does. That's not the only mirror he comes through. So you do have a point.
Ugh, Candyman scares me.
So now, this last story you just told us, that was a Christmas story, or Christmas-ish. Do you have a campfire tale that occurred on Halloween?
I can't really think of anything. And again, I apologize, because we've done, how many is it now? We've done 416 episodes.
Wow.
So sometimes I'll forget.
Right. I mean, that's thousands of stories.
Yeah, and sometimes, because I'll have an interview like this, and somebody says, "Well, have you ever had a story about X, Y, Z?" I'm like, I can't remember one, and then like 2 days later, I'm like, oh, crap, I can't think of a Halloween story. No, I can't, unfortunately. But I can think of a story that reminds me of Halloween, in that what happened is that this guy was trying to, this was in the last book, I think, he was trying to sleep. He lived in a college town in Tennessee. And it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. And for some reason that night, he says he's a big guy, likes to eat, couldn't sleep. Finally fell asleep 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. About 3 o'clock in the morning, there's a knock on the door. And they keep knocking. And they stop. And then they knock again 10 or 15 minutes later. And he said, finally, I'm going to get up. And he figured, being in a college town, he's probably a college kid, being silly. So he gets up thinking he's going to confront somebody, right? So anyway, what happens is that he opens the door, and there's like this 12-year-old girl at the door. And she's like, can you let me in? I want to use your phone. He's like, no, I'm sorry, I can't let you in. He said, let me in. He said, no, I'm sorry, I can't let you in. He said, let me in. And she kept getting more insistent. And then all of a sudden he said he felt a very cold breeze. And then she said, let me in. They told me to come. And they told me to come. So anyway, he feels this huge cold breeze. She looks up at him, and her eyes are pure black. and he doesn't know what to do. And he turns away to get his phone, and he comes back, and she has vanished. So her eyes were like the black-eyed kids, if you've ever heard the black-eyed kids.
Yeah, I have.
And said she looked very, very kind of, if I recall correctly, she looked kind of pale, and she just very angrily insisted, let me in. They told me to come, whoever they are.
Right.
And just 2 or 3 weeks ago in the campfire, I actually had a special campfire. And for the first half hour of the show, I interviewed Brian Bethel, who was basically the first guy to have that black-eyed kid experience. And he's a journalist, so he detailed it extremely well and put it on the internet. And really his is the best-known case of the black-eyed children phenomenon that happened in the 90s. Now, there were cases, if you go back further, that kind of sound like the black-eyed kids ones. But in terms of the modern era, Brian had the first story, and it's very, very well documented. And he explained exactly what happened in great, great detail. So black-eyed kids are one that have come up a few times, and I think they're one of the creepiest.
I wonder what they are.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, I think about, and this is one of the things, you know, you were talking about being afraid of going places or doing things. This is one I even hate to mention, because when people mention them, bad things tend to happen. The jinn. If you're familiar with the jinn.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
And I wonder if the black-eyed children might actually be jinn, because the late Rosemary Ellen Guiley, she was giving a talk on them on this cruise, actually, I was talking about. And she made the point that they kind of are a facsimile of whatever they're trying to be, but they can't get it perfect. Like something will always be off. And black-eyed kids, when they appear, they'll say stuff that's like nonsensical. Like, you know, they would say something like, do you want mayonnaise on your pancake? Or something like that. Just stuff that doesn't make sense. It's almost right, but it's not quite right. And that reminds me a lot of the black-eyed kids, because, you know, the black-eyed kids say that, and if the jinn can't quite get things right, or they're trying to show themselves as children, but they can't quite get it right. So maybe there's some kind of shapeshifter, which even then gets into things like Men in Black. I was going to say, Women in Black.
You're reminding me of the Men in Black in Point Pleasant from the Mothman.
Yes.
There was some,
and the whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what makes me think that sometimes a lot of this is really tied together.
Related.
If you know what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Yes. That it is. So
great. Now I have new things to be scared of. Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys.
Hey, I do my best.
Well, they're Arabic, and you know what? And I love that you brought this up, because jinn are Arabic. So that's an Arabic origin. So we've completely veered off from the classic Christian demonology, Catholic, you know. Right. I love that you're just, you know, because there are these stories in every culture.
Yes.
Right?
And I think that's important, that whatever these things are, whether it's UFOs or ghosts, wherever, we're not dealing with something that just happens in the United States or North America.
Yes, exactly.
You know, not just the U.S. and Canada. This happens all over the world. Now, my show, I tend to get English-speaking people, but in terms of the English-speaking world, I've gotten, you know, pretty much all countries have called in, one country or another, where they speak English, and I'm sure that if I could speak German and I did a show like this, I'd have a ton of German shows. Or if I, you know, if I could speak Arabic, I would have a ton of callers from an Arabic country, whatever it might be, or Japanese or Chinese or whatever the case may be, because these are universal stories.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not bilingual, so we're not getting all the really cool Chinese ghosts.
Right. Well, I will. That's right. Well, I will tell you, I find a large interest in what I do from the Latino community.
Oh, yeah,
There's a strong interest and a strong oral tradition of ghost stories and a tie to the other side. So that's really, that's really a big thing.
Yeah. One of our previous guests is Latino, who got an attachment when she was in Mexico. They're very, like, a lot of these cultures, Latina, African, West Indian, it's the paranormal, the supernatural is almost part of the culture. in a lot of senses. There's still that aura of superstition, of, you know.
Well, yeah, but I would also say that it's a recognition. I mean, I think in the West or Western European-based cultures tend to be like, oh, very materialistic, and we've got it all figured out, and we can lay it all on a scale and put it on a test tube. So I don't look at it as much as superstition as actually those cultures are actually more in touch with the other side of life than we as more, those of us who come from like a Western European tradition. That's kind of the spirituality has been ripped out of a lot of that.
Much better way of putting it. Much better way of putting it. Exactly. Exactly.
Where the Latino culture and the African culture and some of these other cultures, they haven't lost touch with the other side of life. And I think that many times some of us have.
Yeah, no, I mean, you go down there and it's like, I was saying to my friend once, and she's from Kenya, and she's from Kenya, born and raised. She lives here now, and I was saying to her, I can't remember what I was talking about, so horror movies or something, or witches or Harry Potter. She'd never read Harry Potter, and I was like, you gotta, and she's like, in Africa, we don't look at it the same way as you guys do. It's not like this harmless thing that's fun and exciting and interesting. It's a lot more... Like you said, they're very in touch with that still, the spiritual side of things. They have a lot of witch doctors. They have a lot of, it's very different. It's very interesting. It'd be nice to get some stories.
Yeah, I would love to get more stories from other parts of the world.
Yeah.
I really would. And I encourage, and I always get excited. I mean, a lot of times it will be Americans who maybe on business or somewhere. I find somebody calls from Japan or somewhere and get excited, and then it's an American, and I'm glad to talk to them, but I'm like, I would like somebody, a native of that culture. But we've had some good calls from places like Brazil and South America and some natives of those countries and those areas, and that's been very cool. I love talking to international callers.
Yeah, I bet. And because a lot of those places, the societies are older as well, right? I mean, Canada and America is pretty young compared to Europe.
That's true.
Compared to, China.
I just thought about that. I was in England over the summer, and I just kept reflecting on how relatively young everything we have is here in North America.
Yeah.
Whereas, you walk in, I saw England's oldest door. It dated from 1000. It was just mind-blowing.
I know. I was in Scotland last year at Roslin Chapel. It was built in 1647, and I was like, 1647, like, long time ago.
And it's still there.
That's right.
It's still there, yeah. It's still there. They actually filmed part of the, what's that movie, the one with Tom Hanks, the Da Vinci Code book. They filmed part of the movie there.
Interesting.
Yep.
Because he writes about it in the book, Dan Brown.
So, Jim, we got one more spooky tale to send us off on our Halloween campfire circle here.
Let's see here. I'm trying to think of... Oh, this is a funny one. This one gentleman, this is from a couple of weeks ago, he said that he lived in this house, and I'm going to put this as kindly as I can. He would... there would be problems when he and his girlfriend would be close.
Okay.
And on more than one occasion, he and his girlfriend would be close. And he would have somebody going, Mike. And then he would go out in the hallway. He thought it was his one neighbor. Nobody. And then he would resume, and it'd be, Mike. And they just drove him and his girlfriend crazy. So I tried to be euphemistic about all that, but the point is that I called it on the show the jealous ghost, and I thought that was kind of funny.
Are you sure it wasn't the girlfriend?
No, it was not. It was not.
I'm just joking.
It was not.
Well, Jim,
but I never had that on the history of the show. I never had somebody call in and say, that's what happened, and I thought that was unique. That was something a little bit different.
Did you ask him, was he maybe previously married or had maybe it was an ex-girlfriend that had passed and he wasn't aware.
Well, this was a male voice, though.
Oh.
So, yeah, maybe, well, but you were onto something, Marie. This is a good idea here, because, and I didn't think about this, could have this been a spirit attached to his girlfriend? It may be someone who was jealous of him.
That's...
Yes.
Well, could be. Love is a powerful emotion.
It truly is.
Yeah. So is jealousy, though.
And speaking of love, I wanted you to touch on your soulmate podcast. How does that work?
Well, basically what we've done is we started this podcast where we talk a little bit about relationships that people call in and say how they found their soulmate. Now, they can also tell other stories, and we're going to probably diversify as time goes on, but the idea is people have such interesting stories about how they discovered their significant other. Mm-hmm. And it's like sometimes it's against all odds, you know. I was like, I met this person 5 years ago, and I couldn't get them out of their mind, and then boom, you know, we met again. And even my wife and I had a similar story to that. We had met at college, which was total happenstance because we were in a group project because our last names had similar letters. So we were just kind of grouped together, and we got along well, but nothing, you know, ever happened. And then 4 or 5 years later, on a very rudimentary, almost pre-internet thing, I was on there, and they used to have this command where you could look up names, and I saw her name, and it was very unique. I'm like, oh, it has to be her. And I messaged her, and then I said, well, this is silly. Let's talk on the phone. And then we talked on the phone, had a date, and then, you know, 20-some years later, we've had 2 kids, and we're happily married, and all that good stuff. But the thing was is that so many weird things had to happen. Like, for example, it was a science and religion class, which actually is interesting because that kind of ties into what I do now. I've always been interested in this stuff. But the thing is that I was taking a science class that I was getting a B in, and I ended up dropping the class because I wasn't happy with a B. Now, who drops a class because they're getting a B, especially if you're not a major? But I dropped it. If I wouldn't have dropped that class, then I would have never met her. So I think that sometimes things in life are kind of preordained. You know?
Oh, yes. Oh, like
yes. Or you're kind of guided towards it. I'm not saying that we don't have free will, but things you're put in certain situations, I think sometimes. I think we were, and I think that happens to a lot of people. So we like to talk about stuff like that on Soulmate Story.
Oh, no, that's kind of funny because that's how I met my husband to be. It was so kind of the same thing. Do you want to tell the story, Marie, or it's not scary? I mean, it probably is for him now, but it is kind of.
Sure.
Pardon? Well, it was funny because he was a friend of a friend, and she, my friend Leela was dating his brother. She brought a fish over to my house, and she was like, Bob doesn't like this. Brody caught it. I'm like, who's Brody? And she's like, oh, Bob's brother, and, you know, he does all this great stuff. And I was like, oh, cool, let's make the fish. So we ate this salmon, and she was sharing a picture on Facebook, and it popped up in my newsfeed, and I saw a picture of this guy, and I was like, I don't know who that is, but that's the face I'm going to be looking at when I'm 65. And the feeling was so strong. Turned out it was this Brody guy. So I was like, I have to meet this Brody guy because I know that he's the guy for me. She's like, you don't even know him, and that's crazy. And I'm like, no, I don't know why. I know that that's the guy I'm supposed to be with. And everybody thought I was crazy. And I would tell everybody who listened, this is the guy I'm going to be with. And my workmates, everybody was like, you're nuts. And Leela said, you know what? He's 45 years old. He's never had a girlfriend. He's happy, bachelor, loner. He's got like 4 cats, you know, 2 dogs. And, you know, and I was like, no, but he's the guy for me. They're like, it's not going to happen. My car breaks down. And Brody's brother Bob, who's Leela's boyfriend, says, oh, you know, my brother could probably fix it for you. And I'm like, oh, this is my chance. Like, I'm going to go over there, and he's going to be mine. Sure enough, I bring my car. He phones me up. We make an arrangement. I know the whole time that he's the guy for me. Isn't this crazy? And I swear, like, I'm not crazy. I knew the whole time. I brought the car over. That was it.
There you go.
Yeah, we clicked. He fixed my car. Then he took me for dinner, you know, and then, we went on our first date like a week later, and that was that.
And you've been together how long now?
That's fantastic.
8 years, and he had never lived with a girl. He'd never lived with a girlfriend. He'd always just had roommates. He was living on his own at the time. He'd been living on his own for 10 years or so. And we're still together. Pardon?
That phrase, meant to be, I think there's something to it. I really do.
Yeah. Like he, and we both still don't understand it.
But you don't have to, because it doesn't matter as long as you're together, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was...
There you go.
I'll tell you, I can be pretty scary, but yeah, he's... this whole soulmates, I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to look it up and listen to it.
Thank you.
Yeah, no,
Thank you, soulmate stories. Thank
you
so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's been great talking to you guys. I appreciate it. Thank you. It's always an honor to be asked.
And speaking of people listening to your podcast, how can people listen to your podcasts?
Probably the easiest way is whatever app they listen to their podcast. Plug in my name, Jim Harold, or Jim Harold's Campfire, and it should pop right up. That's the easiest way. And if they're interested in the books, they could go to Amazon and just type in Jim Harold's Campfire, and they're available in paperback and Kindle, both. So, and they're cheap. The ebook is only like $2.99, so it's pretty cheap. But mainly, I hope people go. I mean, I love for people to buy the books, but really, I look for people to listen to the shows and maybe even tell their own story.
And you're on several podcasts too as a guest. Like, weren't you just on with Jeff Bellinger?
Actually, yeah. He was on my show, and then he wanted me to do a voice. He has a show, and everybody should check that out, New England Legends, where he tells dramatizes different stories. So I was a pirate.
Ooh, fun. Okay. So you do some acting too.
Yes, I did some acting. Yeah. So yeah. Well, I don't think anybody has to worry about losing any parts to me. But it was fun to do.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show and for sharing the stories. It's you made our Halloween special very epic, and I appreciate it very much.
Yeah. It was truly an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you, and happy Halloween to you both and to the entire ParaDivas audience. Thank you again.
Thank you very
much.
Happy
Halloween, everyone, and until our next episode, stay scared.
Oh, just some scary movie. You know, the one with the guy in the white mask who walks around and stalks babysitters.